Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sandhu. So as I was just going through some of my old files, I came across this video titled "Impossible Reasons for the Seasons in the Globe Earth Model." I noticed that it was not actually finished. So I might have started doing this about 4 or 5 years ago and never got around to finishing it, or I might have finished it and lost the file since my old YouTube channel was terminated. So I'm going to post what I had done so far in the beginning of this video, which is like people like Bill Nye, the science guy, explaining to us how seasons work on the globe Earth model, and then I'm going to dissect what they're saying and prove to you that their model, their reasons that they give us are an impossibility, that seasons on Earth cannot work at all the way they are being explained to us, which just, again brings into the question this whole solar system model, the globe Earth model, the ever expanding universe model, and all these kind of things which we know are false. And if you have never ever understood, never come across this information, then just watch this video and the questions that it raises, go ahead, send them to anybody in anywhere, in any field, in astronomy, astrophysics, whatever, and ask them to explain, how this is possible that they're telling us that there are seasons just because the Earth is tilted at an axis. Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sandhu, and today is Monday, December the 21st, 2015. The year is almost over, and I want to do a short video today about how the seasons apparently work in the globe Earth model. And the reason for doing that is one of the frequently asked questions about the flat Earth is, how do seasons work? And in order to give you the answer to that, actually is quite simple in my opinion, but it's more important to compare the two models. Okay, to compare the reasons as given in the globe Earth model and those that we can observe directly with our own eyes on a flat Earth, a plain Earth model. Okay, so you do the comparison yourself and you decide. I've just presented this. I'll present the information here, and you can decide for yourself which one you think is the more reasonable, which is the more logical, which is the more scientific model out of the two. Yesterday, I happened to catch a brief moment of a show on TV, which was an automobile show. It was a call-in auto show, and the expert that they had on, he said something like to the effect that low gas prices are contributing to global warming. Because we've been having an exceptionally warm winter on the east coast of North America, where I am, temperatures are way above normal, and of course everybody's screaming global warming. All right, so this guy, he apparently found his own reason, that is the low gas prices that are causing global warming. Now, people like us, at least my audience, hopefully they have some, not hopefully, I know most of you guys have some critical thinking capabilities, therefore you understand how insane the statement is. And as I was studying this explanation for how seasons work in the globe, as presented by guys like Bill Nye, the same thought came to my mind. This is insane. This is impossible. But that's what I think. Okay, let me know what you think. And if you like the information in here, please, please, please share it. Okay, share it as much as possible. Send it to high school teachers, send it to wherever you like, to pass it along. And let's see what kind of response people are going to give to it. Okay, here's a short video clip from Bill Nye explaining how seasons work. This is the globe Earth model, explanations for why we have seasons on the Earth.
The reason we have seasons on Earth is because the Earth is tilted. Now let's say that this is the Earth, and there's an imaginary line going through the middle of it called the Earth's axis. It's tilted, and it stays tilted as the Earth goes around the sun at 100,000 kilometers an hour. That's 1 billion kilometers every year.
Next time your wife tells you that you don't take her anywhere, remind her that she's moving at 100,000 kilometers an hour, and this year, by December 31st, she will have traveled almost 1 billion kilometers. That's going places, I would say.
Now, not only is the Earth going around the sun, but the Earth is spinning. And when you're on the part of the Earth that's toward the sun, it's daytime. And when you're on the part of the Earth that's away from the sun, it's nighttime.
Pay close attention as you will see that these explanations for these things, which are passed for science, are always done with cartoons and diagrams which are never to scale. On this screen here, take a look and see how big the sun is as compared to the Earth, okay? And this is still not to scale. But as this explanation of Bill Nye progresses, you'll see how the scale will change and what impact it has on the explanation. I will clarify for you later on.
Now the seasons work in kind of the same way. When the part of the Earth that you're on is tilted toward the sun, it's summertime there. So when it's summertime here at Nye Laboratories, on the other side of the world, it's wintertime in places like South America and Australia.
Hey, Bill, your shoe's untied.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, this stupid comedy routine with his shoe being untied is not placed there by accident. It's deliberately inserted in there to keep you from looking too closely at the explanation that he just gave you as to when it is summer in the northern hemisphere, why is summer in the southern. Sorry, I meant that it'll be when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, why it is winter in the southern.
Then, when the part of the Earth that we're on is tilted away from the sun, it's wintertime here. And it's summertime on the other side of the world. Isn't that wild? All because the Earth's axis is tilted. That's the reason for the seasons. Why are the North and South Poles the coldest places on the Earth? Well, please consider the following. Let's say that this heat lamp is like the sun, because it's hot. And let's say that this globe is like the Earth, because it looks like the Earth. Anyway, we've mounted thermometers on the Earth like this. See? Now, the one at the equator is just about off the scale, and the one at the South Pole is right around the room temperature mark. And the ones in between are somewhere in between. That's because the heat is hitting the one at the equator almost straight on, whereas at the poles, it's just barely grazing by. And then somewhere in between, well, it's somewhere in between. You see, it's not that the equator is closer to the heat.
Actually, Bill, in your model, the equator is closer to the heat or to the sun. Okay, the reason you don't want people to think that it is the seasons are a factor of the distance from the sun is because you want everyone to believe in your magical tilt theory.
It's that the heat is hitting it more straight on. See, if the Earth were sitting like this, then this thermometer would be the hottest, and this one would be the coldest. Anyway, that's why the very warmest places on the Earth are right around the equator, tropical rainforests and jungles. And the very coldest places are at the poles, because they're the ones that the energy from the heat lamp just barely grazes by. I mean the energy from the sun. Well, anyway.
So again, he pulls off his stupid comedy routine because what he said was a blatant lie. All of it was a lie, but the one he said about the hottest places on the earth being around the equator and the jungles and tropical rainforests is not true. Okay, the hottest places on the earth are actually subtropical, and they are not on the equator at all. That is a fact. As the map on the screen shows you, the hottest temperatures ever recorded have been in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, Iran, in that area, down in Australia, and up in the United States and California, and in South America, well south of the equator. So except for some areas in Africa which are close to the equator, actually the hottest temperatures on Earth are not equatorial at all. So the information that he gave you was incorrect.
Using a flashlight, you can see for yourself that direct rays are concentrated on a smaller area than slanted rays. This is why direct rays produce more heat.
Okay, there's so much misinformation and disinformation in this short video that I played for you that, it literally could take me a month to go through it all. Okay, but I don't want to bother doing all that. What is the basic nutshell of what they were saying was, what this Bill Nye was saying is that seasons are caused on a globe because of the Earth's tilt. That as the Earth tilts away, which literally is the same thing. That on the one hand, they say that it is not a factor of distance. But on the other hand, when you really think about it, that is exactly what they're saying, is that it is a factor of distance. That as the distance of the area that is tilted, it changes from the sun, then it has winter and it has season. But anyways, that does not fit their model, so they just focus entirely in on this supposed tilt to explain it away. So as this little clip in the end of the video, is talking about the flashlight, and you can see on the screen here that if a flashlight is flashed directly overhead, then it forms a good perfect circle, and obviously the light, and if there's any heat that goes along with it, will be concentrated into one spot, and that area will be better lit and will be better heated. Now as the angle changes, the light spreads further, so obviously in the furthest part the light will be less concentrated, less diffused, and the heat that accompanies it will also be less. That just is common sense. We can all understand it and it makes sense. So here, for example, in this chart that this little diagram that you look at on the screen, it says direct versus indirect energy. Direct energy reaches the ground in a concentrated form. Agreed. Okay. Indirect energy is spread out when it reaches the ground. Agreed. So how does this help us to understand what is going on with the seasons? And why do I say that the model that they are offering us is incorrect? It's not just incorrect, they know that it's a blatant lie, but they still, by repeating the lie often enough, they hope that it becomes the truth. And for most people it has, but there are those few of us who are still left with enough God-given ability to question the experts and to challenge their so-called facts and to exercise our God-given abilities of critical thinking. We can come to a different conclusion that no, this is basically horse manure and we will not buy it. So here, let me show you what the problem with it was. What is the problem with this model about this tilt of the earth causing the seasons? Okay, just to briefly sum up what Bill Nye and his cohorts, his colleagues, they suggest, the modern day physics suggests, astronomy suggests as the reasons for the seasons in the globe earth model. It's summed up by this diagram that you see on the screen. And what we read here is the earth is revolving around an external axis, the sun. In addition, the earth is tilted on its internal axis. Because of these two phenomena at different stages of the earth's revolution, one hemisphere will receive more direct sunlight than the other hemisphere. Which is not exactly true when you can look at this diagram. Yes, it is true that a greater portion of the northern hemisphere, for example, on the left side, receives direct sun rays in this model than the southern, but that doesn't mean that it is just the northern hemisphere that is receiving them, because the tilt is only 23.5 degrees. It is not a 90-degree tilt. Okay, therefore, the hemisphere receiving direct sun rays, and that is wrong, because again, like I said, it is not the entire hemisphere that is receiving direct rays, and neither is the entire southern hemisphere not receiving direct sun rays, so this is disingenuous. Therefore, the hemisphere receiving direct sun rays is experiencing the season of summer, and the other hemisphere is experiencing winter. Okay, what we have in these diagrams is not what they show, it is what they leave out. What they leave out is some very important information, which is the relative size of the earth and the so-called planets and their distances from the sun. They leave out what exactly is the solar system and how large it is. They leave out the elliptical orbit of the earth and what it means, because when we have winter in the northern hemisphere, apparently the earth is at that point in time closest to the sun. Okay, and they leave those kind of information out for us to dig up and to make sense out of it, that how come if the earth is 5 million kilometers closer to the sun than it normally is that I'm having winter here, it doesn't make sense. So leave all those things out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the relative scale of things which come from their own figures. I'm not making this up. This is what they tell us the sun is. This is what they tell us the earth size is, etc. And then you compute that, this model that they're suggesting to us, it doesn't compute. It is not compatible with their own information. So I'm not digging up some occult information for you, something, revelatory that has come only to me. No, this will be all information that is coming directly from NASA websites, their other physics websites, astronomy websites, and then you will see that what they themselves say, they contradict their own information. All right, so let's just begin by understanding something about what we are told is the size of the sun. So here's this website. It says, how big is the sun? The sun is really, really big. it is difficult to get a true feel for how big it is because nothing in our daily life comes even close. But we can use objects that we are familiar with to provide us with a scale that can allow us to at least see how big the sun is compared to the Earth and other planets in our solar system. If you think of the sun as a basketball, the Earth would only be the size of the head of a pin. All right, this is very, very important information, and I'll tell you why. So if we were to do a little search on Google as to why there are seasons on the Earth, see, why are there seasons on the Earth? This is the search. What do we find here? We find cartoons upon cartoons upon cartoons trying to explain why there are seasons, okay? You don't see any real science here, in my opinion, okay? Let's take one of these, for example, here. Okay, so this again is just some kind of graphics that they're showing us that this is the reason why we are having seasons here. And look at this here. Notice this here, what the Earth is bigger than the sun. Okay, look at this here. Okay, notice anything here? The Earth is bigger, much, much bigger than the sun. Okay, notice this here? Again, same thing, same thing. This is generally how, or if the sun is shown, somewhat bigger than the Earth, you still do not have it to scale. But what will happen when you put it to scale? You shall see very shortly as I explain to you what the significance of this is, that when we begin to keep the relative size of the Earth and the sun in mind, this model just falls apart, like I said, like a deck of cards, like a row of dominoes. It'll come crashing down like a house built on sand, as the Bible tells us. All right, so now let's just cut to the chase. What is the problem with the information that has been given to us so far? Okay, the main problem is that all those diagrams that we have been shown, they are not to scale. Now let me show you another couple of examples in which, because the diagrams are not to scale, that their information becomes believable. As soon as they come to scale, as shown on this diagram, this picture that you're looking at, where we have this Jupiter in front of the sun, and the Earth itself is so small that it's just a teeny weeny dot, okay? Not the way it is shown in all the diagrams that I just showed you on Google. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you were to take two spherical objects, one of which has a diameter, we're told, is 109 times that of the other object, what will happen? What happens is that for all intents and purposes, both these spheres become flat disks to begin with, okay? Secondly, the smaller object, because it is so very tiny, if this bigger object like the sun is emitting light and heat, okay, all this nonsense they tell you about, that it's like the rays are not direct rays and indirect rays and incident rays and all that kind of stuff. The angle is different. All that becomes a moot point. Because like for that example that was given, about the sun being a basketball and the Earth being the pinhead. If you were to take a basketball, like, that is brilliantly lit, and you put a pinhead in front of it, that pinhead, even though it is spherical, it is not going to be a sphere anymore in comparison. It is just going to be like a flat disk. And there's going to be so much energy that is coming from the bigger object that it is going to hit the entire surface with almost equal intensity. Where it's hitting the poles or where it's hitting the equator, it will not matter even in the least little bit. The difference in intensity will be almost not measurable. Not what we observe here on our Earth, where we are told that the temperature can go down to minus 70 degrees or even lower in Antarctica, for example, whereas it could be like, plus 100 towards the equatorial regions. That's like a 200-degree difference. That can never happen when these objects are that disproportionate in size, as I will prove to you in a minute. All right, let me just go back to this diagram here again, which was in one of the videos that they were showing to prove the seasons, okay? In this diagram, it tells us, the Earth is revolving around an external axis, etc., etc. And because of these things here, more direct sun rays, then the one hemisphere will receive more direct sun rays than the other hemisphere, okay? And then they show you this diagram with the sun in the middle, these three little rays that are supposed to be direct rays hitting the earth, and that's why they tell you seasons exist, okay? The problem, what's the problem here? The problem is the scale of this diagram, okay? Does this sun that they're showing you here, does that look like to you that is 109 times the diameter of the earth? Does it? Okay. And is that going to prove to be a problem when somebody is trying to do some science if these diagrams are not to scale? Oh yeah, it's huge. This is not science. This is this is indoctrination into something that is entirely false because it cannot be proven using a real science. So I would now like to show you a couple of diagrams of my own to illustrate this point. But before I do, check out this picture, which is allegedly a photograph by NASA, okay? Okay, allegedly a photograph, which there's so many problems with it that I can't even go into it here. But what we really want to look at is the sun and the earth, okay? Now, at least we have an idea of the scale that they are, like they're saying, it's to scale. You can see the earth is in that little blue dot in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, what this is showing is allegedly a solar flare. Now, look at the size of this flare here, right? This flare is gigantic, right? Now, if it is going to come to the earth, right? Which part of the earth do you think is going to escape it? Do you think the earth being as small as it is, and especially if viewed from 93 million miles out, this earth would not look round, okay? This earth would not look round. It would look completely flat, okay? So that's one point. The second point is that if something like this amount of energy was to come to the earth, not any square inch of it would escape it. Even the one that is not facing the sun, this heat would be so intense that it would envelop the whole earth. Okay, it would be like the earth was submerged in an ocean of fire. That's what would happen, okay, if any of this was real. Secondly, look at the light of the sun which is coming out the surface and the sun rays. Okay, here they kind of black it out, okay, to show you that it's really not reaching the earth. Is that right? Why is that wrong? Whatever energy is leaving the surface of the sun, it is coming towards the earth, as I'm going to illustrate to you with a couple of diagrams pretty soon. I have illustrated on the screen what I'm trying to prove to you here. When they talk about direct and indirect rays, that only works if the sun is a lot smaller than the earth. And they try to make that to be a factor of the distance. But the distance is irrelevant here because it is the relative size, okay? Now they're showing you this in this picture, the earth to scale. If the earth was directly in front of the sun, it would still be 109 times smaller in diameter than the sun, okay? If the earth has moved away 100 million miles, the relative size does not change, okay? So whatever energy as shown by these arrows, and these arrows are not even fully illustrated yet because this diagram itself, because we would need to make that sun like, much bigger because the energy is going to be coming from at least one half of the sun directly towards the earth, directly. And all of it is going to hit the earth directly, all of the earth, not just like in the equator or the pole, because I said that the relative size compared to the sun is so small that as far as the sun is concerned, there is no pole and there is no equator on the earth. It is just like one flat disk that it is going to cover the whole earth. As you can see, you can't see the earth now because the energy of the sun, it is covering the entire earth because the sun is so much wider than the earth. That is the reason why when they show you those diagrams, they only have like 2 or 3 little lines saying direct rays, and they make that diagram not to scale, because when you begin to understand the scale and the relative size of these two objects, then it becomes clear that the earth is actually swimming in an ocean of energy that's coming from the sun. It should be, if this information is correct, that the sun is 109 times the diameter, and that, this mass and volume is so much greater than the earth. If that were true, then essentially there will be all of the energy that is coming from the sun. It is going to not just hit the surface of the earth, it will be going all around it by a factor of 109. All right, so it will be like 50 times above, 50 times below the size. You could put like 50 or 54 Earths on each side of the Earth. That is how much energy is going to be going by. So like there's this ocean of Earths filled with the energy of the sun that will envelop the Earth. Okay? That's what would happen. Now, if you still don't get it, I'm going to show you some more diagrams that I'm going to make so that you will not be able to question this concept anymore. It is not a concept, it is science that I'm showing you here. Okay, so you remember that basketball and pinhead comparison that somebody had made on the science website to illustrate the relative size of the sun and the earth? So let's use that example. Okay, so here you can see we have a basketball and we have a pinhead on the left. Now, when they show you these diagrams, which are used to illustrate the seasons with the direct and indirect rays, etc. What do they do here? They'll show you like a few rays hitting a middle part of the earth, but everything else is like as if there is no energy, that the sun is only able to hit 30% of the earth's surface and the rest is just completely left out. And that is just not realistic in this model. See, if this ball was indeed the sun, then, is it not reasonable that its energy is going to be coming from every part of its surface, not just from the middle part? Okay. So, and when you keep that in mind, that the sun from the pole to pole, it is going to be releasing energy towards the earth and throughout the so-called solar system. And if that were happening, look at these arrows. These are the arrows that illustrate to you how much of this energy is actually not just going to be hitting the earth, okay, but it is going to be totally blanketing it. It is going to be submerging the earth in this energy of heat and light that is coming towards it. There's no other way, okay? The sun's diameter is like 109 times the size of the earth. So basically what you could do is you could put like 54 Earths above the earth, 54 more below it, 54 behind it, and 54 in front of it, okay? That is how much of that energy, that's how wide that band of energy will be that is going to be coming towards the earth. So tell me, in this model, how is it possible that only a little bit is hitting the equatorial area, but the polar areas are being left completely, completely and totally without any energy? Is that possible? It's not possible. Not in this model. Absolutely not. Now let's just go back to one of the diagrams that I showed you earlier, which gave us the relative size of the sun and the earth. And it also included Jupiter in there to give you an idea of how small the earth really is in comparison even to Jupiter, never mind the sun. But now look at this diagram here, okay? There's the sun and the earth is in front of it, right? That's it. So now what you can also do here is that you could really take the earth and put it dead smack in the middle, okay? You can put it right in the middle. See this illustration, when you have the earth right in the center of the sun, positioned in center, it gives you a better understanding of what is happening in this model that they tell us is the model of our solar system and of the sun and the planets, etc. Okay, this red circle, I can't make it any smaller, but the earth to scale would be actually much, much, much smaller. But let's say the earth was even as big as this circle is as compared to the orange sun in the background. What will happen? What will happen is that not just a little bit of energy is going to be hitting the Earth from the sun, okay? It is going to eclipse it, like I said, by a factor of at least 54 on each side, 54 and a half, let's say. So one is hitting directly, and then 54 more Earths could also be hit by the same amount of energy that is going to be released by the sun. And since the sun's energy is not just going to be only limited to that radius or that diameter, it is going to spread out even more as light as it diffuses as it goes out. Heat will be diffused as it goes out. It is going to cover like even broader area, even wider area. So not just 109 Earths, you could probably have like 1,000 Earths and it will still be covering it with its energy. But this is the reality in this model, okay? The Earth and the sun are always going to be directly in front of each other. No matter where their position is in the sky, they're always going to be directly centered upon each other. Every body will be, spherical body will be centered upon each other, okay? You could take an axis and you could put it right through the middle of both of them and they will be perfectly centered. And when that is happening, there is no possible way that any area of any part of the surface of the Earth will not receive an equal amount of energy from the sun. It is an impossibility in this model. This is the reason why these models that Bill Nye, etc., show you, they never are to scale. Because if they started showing you this to scale, even a kindergartner would understand that this is an impossibility, what they are showing us. Now here's another diagram that I got off Google. It shows you the sun and then it shows you the Earth to scale. Okay, you can see that. Can you see the Earth? Well, you can't because it's so small. Now, just tell me that if the sun is blasting its energy, is it not going from the top part of the sun to the bottom part on in every direction, 360 degrees? So as I've illustrated again with these arrows, from the top pole to the bottom pole of the sun, and every point in between is going to be blasting energy in every direction. And it is certainly going to be, some of it is going to be headed towards the Earth. And the Earth being as small as it is so small as shown in this diagram that you can't even see it. Is there any part of the Earth that is not going to receive an equal amount of energy? How is it possible that they talk about direct and indirect rays when these objects, the relative size of these objects is so disproportionate? It is an impossibility. And if you still don't get it, I'm going to show you one more illustration here. All right, so what you have on the screen is a picture of one of those good old-fashioned searchlights from the wartime, okay? And these searchlights, of course, you know, they were quite big and they were looking for enemy aircraft, okay? So let's imagine that this searchlight is the sun. And this is exactly how the sun would work, right? It is blasting out its light and heat in all directions. In this case, it's only going towards one direction, but in this case, the sun, because it's allegedly a sphere, is blasting it out in every direction into space, okay, throughout our solar system. So now I have put that Earth in the middle. You can see the dot in the upper left-hand corner. That's the Earth. Now let's see here. Do you see what I'm trying to say to you? Is that if these sizes are correct, what we are told, okay, then there is going to be this vast ocean of energy that is emanating from the sun in every direction, okay? It is going to be literally like taking a little tennis ball and putting it into the Pacific Ocean or into like a giant, like a big lake or something, or let's say even a swimming pool, okay? Like you put that in there, a tennis ball, like is it going to be not covered and soaked in that energy every direction, okay? So if this light comes towards the Earth, the surface of the Earth that is facing the light, of course, will be brightly lit. But so much of this light is going to be going past the Earth that even the backside will hardly be in darkness. Okay, and same applies to the heat. Whatever energy is coming to the poles, it is going to be almost the same at the equator. There's going to be very, very little difference, if any, whatsoever. Not just that, there's so much energy that is going past the Earth that the backside of it would also be equally swimming in that same amount of energy and heat. Okay, therefore, there should be no seasons on the Earth whatsoever. None. None. It should have an equal temperature. Okay. The only question is how much of this energy will reach us. Okay. Will it be a great amount so that it's going to be 100 degrees everywhere on the Earth? Or it's going to be very little so that it's like, frozen wasteland everywhere on the Earth. But there can be no differences. The poles cannot be frozen, and the equatorial and the subtropical areas be like, like a sauna. It is an impossibility. It is an impossibility. And you know what? People that will doubt this year, we are told that Mars is like 50 million miles further out, okay, from the Earth. And yet, in the summertime, we are told in the Mars summer, the temperature can hit 70 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. So that means so much of the sun's energy is going past the Earth that it can heat Mars up to 70 degrees. That's how much has gone past the Earth, and that's 50 million more miles out. Do you get it? Do you get it? That this is exactly what should happen, what you're seeing on the screen. And these diagrams that they show you, that's how they should be. The scale of the sun should be so much bigger than the Earth that all their explanations with this tilt and this and that the southern is facing, the northern is facing, it would go out the window. It would be just, everybody will sit there and laugh. If Bill Nye tried to give that explanation using models to scale, his audience would think that this was a comedy hour, that it was an episode of Comedy Central. That's how funny those explanations are, because they are not science. Bill Nye is a comedian, so he's making a joke out of you. Okay, he's making a joke out of you. He's a joker. That's all it is. It's not science. This, what I'm showing you, is science. So I'm going to finish off here with a couple of, their own illustrations to prove my point. And I hope I've proven it by now. But once again, I just want to show you this picture of the sun and the Earth and their relative sizes. And this is what's important to understand, is that the distance is irrelevant because the relative size will never change. Okay, so the relative amount of heat that's coming from the sun, that's going to hit the Earth. The relative amount of light that's going to come and hit the Earth, it is not going to change. The relative amount is not, number, percentage, whatever, is not going to change because of the distance. If you move the Earth closer to the sun, then the sun becomes so much bigger that it is going to blast the entire Earth with the same amount of heat. If you move it away, then yeah, less heat will reach it, but it will reach the entire Earth again because the Earth is that much small. The relative size is not changed. So this idea of the relative size of these objects and their relationship to the amount of energy that is going to be coming towards the Earth, and therefore it is going to be receiving from the sun, it is going to be unchanged in relative terms, okay? You're not talking about the quantity, the actual quantity itself. It's obvious that if you move the Earth a lot closer to the sun, then it would, of course, become far hotter, but it would become hotter all over, not just in one area. And the same thing applies. If you move further back, it'll become colder, but it'll become colder all over, not just in the polar regions or the tropical regions. No, it'll be all over. It'll be the same because the relative size of these objects, which is very easy to see here, if the Earth is really that small, then how come that the poles are receiving less energy than the equator? You can see that it's an impossibility, and that will be the same no matter what the distance of these objects are from each other. There's so many more diagrams and pictures that I can show you to illustrate the impossibility of the reasons for the seasons on the globe Earth model. But let's just finish off with this one here. It's getting kind of late and I want to end this video. It's getting long. See these two diagrams? They're both from Google. They're both from science websites, etc., that teach this here. They're both incompatible though. These both cannot be true at the same time. Okay, now in the model which explains the seasons, they're showing you these three puny red lights, which are supposed to represent the energy of the Earth, and it is not even hitting like half the surface. Okay, it is only hitting like a very, very small area between the equator and the two tropics above it. That's it. Okay, it is not really reaching the whole Earth even. But when you look at the other diagram that they show us about the relative size of the sun and the Earth, then you understand immediately that this is an impossibility. If the Earth really is that small as compared to the sun, then, and the sun's energy is blasting throughout the solar system, is reaching out to Neptune and to Pluto and to all these distant planets, okay? And the Earth, in relative terms, is very, very close. It's a close neighbor of the sun, that we should be getting so much energy, but it should be arriving equally on all parts of the Earth, okay? Because the Earth is so small, it's like a little, flat dime in front of that giant floodlight that I just showed you, okay? There's no possible way that one region would get less or more than the other. It's an impossibility. This diagram on the left with these three little rays hitting the Earth and the rest of it not getting any energy, it's an impossibility. Okay, I hope you see it. I hope you understand that this diagram on the left, which explains the seasons, is only possible if the sun is much smaller than the Earth. Now let me end this video with one last diagram that you will find on the internet. It's trying to explain why we have seasons on the Earth. And what's the problem with this diagram? I hope you understand by now that what they're showing you is a puny little sun with a gigantic Earth that is spinning around it, allegedly. Okay, now, if this was truly the case where the sun was much smaller, then yeah, okay, seasons will happen. Because obviously at different times of the year, as the sun moves across the Earth, it will not be providing the same amount of energy to different parts of it. That explains it, simple. But in their model, the sun is supposed to be 109 times the diameter of the Earth. So let's change this model, okay? Let's now increase the size of the sun to 109 times the diameter of the Earth. And then what will happen? Now try and tell me that the tilt or the axis of this or that is going to cause the seasons. Nah, ridiculous, 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 ridiculous. It is just asinine to even think that's possible. And it should be easy enough to prove. Why haven't they done it? Go ask Bill Nye. Make a sphere, a light that is like, and take another object and make sure that the light is 109 size the diameter of that little ball. Take like a ping pong ball or something, or a little ball bearing, and make a light that is 109 times the diameter of the ball bearing. It shouldn't be that hard to do. We should be able to do that. Then shine that light, and then show us that it is not going to be hitting the entire surface of that ball bearing equally. Then show us that there will be a difference in temperature at the pole from the equator. Show us that. Should be quite easy to do. Hey, Bill? There's a challenge for you. All right, thank you for listening. This is Paul Sandhu.
I thought that I had everything, but I had no peace within. I knew that I was in the wrong, the way out I couldn't see. I said, Lord, I really want you. So great is my need. Then he spoke these words to me. Said, you must be born again. I said, thank you, precious Lord, for taking me out of sin. I praise him in the morning, I praise him at night, I praise him everywhere I go, I praise him in the light of I've got the river through Jesus Christ. I've got the river through Jesus I've got the river through Jesus Christ. I praise him in the morning, I praise him at night, I praise him everywhere I go, I praise him in the light of I've got the river through Jesus Christ. I've got the river through Jesus I've got the river through Jesus Christ. Don't you need someone? Don't you need Jesus Christ? He'll take care of your sorrow and he'll